Well, world leaders have been lining up to condemn Putin after he ordered those forces into the separatist regions of Ukraine. European Union foreign ministers are meeting today and could decide on new sanctions for Russia. EU ambassadors in Brussels this morning are also discussing a bigger sanctions package than originally planned. Well, for more now on reaction from Europe, let's bring in Dave Keating in Brussels. Dave, what more can you tell us?
Well, it looks like by the end of today, we will have EU sanctions against Russia. The question is what those sanctions are going to look like. Will they be big? Will they be small? Will they be broad? Will they be targeted? That's what needs to be worked out in all of these meetings today. So right now, as you mentioned, we've got the EU member state representatives meeting here in Brussels, and then this afternoon in Paris, that's where the actual vote will take place. Now, obviously, there are countries that are traditionally more hawkish when it comes to Russia and countries that are closer to Russia or more pacifist. So the key countries to watch for those votes are obviously Germany with the highest number of votes in the council. Italy is always one to watch, and Hungary. Hungary, there's a big question, although we did get a statement from Hungary's foreign minister said that they are working constructively with the council, suggesting that they will support some kind of sanctions. Now, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs Josep Borrell said this morning that they will require unanimity for the sanctions vote. It is something that is not really legally required. As an academic debate about this, but by convention they are unanimous. So they need every country's vote, which means Hungary's vote in particular is going to be very important. Would Hungary support really robust sanctions? And it would even be wise to have robust sanctions at this point. Now, yesterday we got a statement from the two EU presidents saying that they were going to target the sanctions on the individuals involved in this illegal act. Well, the individuals involved would be the Kremlin leadership, and notably Vladimir Putin himself. This morning, the Lithuanian prime minister said that all of the people in that video yesterday of the Security Council in Russia, so all of the ministers, should be the targets of the sanctions. However, sanctioning Vladimir Putin himself, he acknowledged, and he's one of the most hawkish on Russia, would be difficult. Targeting heads of states with sanctions is a difficult endeavor and maybe something that should be saved. So I think we're unlikely, if even he's saying that, we're unlikely to see sanctions on Vladimir Putin himself today, but we may see it on his inner circle. Of course, this is all being coordinated with Washington and London, so it will also depend what they're doing, and we're expecting sanctions announcements from those countries as well later today. So lots of phone calls today, lots of coordination. On the EU side, they're going to have to, it's doubly as difficult as it is for Washington or London, because they have to get consensus from all these different countries with all different types of relationships with Vladimir Putin.
Dave, what about NATO in all of this? Putin's blaming NATO for the crisis. He's calling the alliance an existential threat to Russia. How has NATO been responding?
Well, obviously, there was fierce condemnation yesterday from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, but today NATO is really taking more of a back seat, because although NATO has been so much the focus of this dispute between Russia and the West, NATO intervention militarily is completely off the table, even if Russia were to have a full-scale invasion of all of Ukraine. So right now the focus is on sanctions, and because this was the lower limit of what Putin could announce, and that it's just recognition of independence, the sanctions is really the focus and not the full package of sanctions. So the focus has really moved to the national governments, to the EU, particularly the EU will be the focus on these sanctions today. And then I think what we'll see later in the week is NATO will become more in the focus, because there will be a question, should they send more battle groups to Eastern Europe, the NATO countries that are bordering Ukraine. Ukraine, of course, is not a NATO member, but they're going to want to reassure those countries on the eastern flank of NATO that they would be protected in the event of a Russian invasion of NATO. Highly unlikely, but they're going to want to reassure those countries. So the focus, I think, for today and tomorrow will be sanctions, and then later in the week, depending on these fast-moving developments, we will see more military announcements, I think, from NATO.
All right, Dave, thanks so much for that. That's Dave Keating reporting from Brussels.